Absolutely everyone is talking about the latest discussion of Larry Fink about Bitcoin at Davos, but everybody is missing a huge detail of what he was saying and what that could mean about trillions of dollars now flowing into Bitcoin. Everybody is focusing on the major price prediction that Larry Fink made, but let's listen closely so you can hear the detail that I think highlights trillions of dollars potentially coming into Bitcoin.
If you're frightened of your debasement of your currency or you're frightened of your economic or political stability of your country, you can have an internationally based instrument called Bitcoin that will overcome those local fears. And so I'm a big believer in the utilization of that as an instrument. And so if that becomes true, and you see that it could be a proper hedge against maybe hope security or equities. Yeah. The question is, could you see a 2 or 5% allocation? I was with a sovereign wealth fund.
All right, stop right there. What did he say? Those magic words, sovereign wealth fund. You could see anything from 2 to 5%. Now, I don't want to cut him off completely because I still want to highlight the major news here going forward. But he mentioned sovereign wealth fund, and we're going to dive into why that is significant here in a minute.
During this week, and that was the conversation. Should we have a 2% allocation? Should we have a 5% allocation? If everybody adopted that conversation, but it would be 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 for Bitcoin.
Well, does it also?
I'm not promoting it, by the way.
So he's not promoting it. Obviously, that was a little tongue-in-cheek there, but we're seeing Larry Fink openly saying, hey, if the sovereign wealth funds start to develop a potential for Bitcoin as 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% even, you could see massive amounts of Bitcoin gains, getting up to potentially 700,000. And with all this, we even saw BlackRock's ETF purchase an all-time high of Bitcoin worth a single 600 million worth of Bitcoin. Its single largest purchase in the entire year. But let's dive in. Sovereign wealth funds. Why is this important? Why am I highlighting the major sovereign wealth funds? Well, there's been a lot of rumors floating around here about sovereign wealth funds potentially buying Bitcoin. So what does BlackRock know? BlackRock seems to be connected with a lot of these sovereign wealth funds. BlackRock seems to be connected with a lot of these major money managers. But why is this all of a sudden a giant talking point? I thought it was all about nation state adoption. I thought it was all about the ETFs. We seem to have forgot about the sovereign wealth funds. Now, what these sovereign wealth funds represents is a over $10 trillion market that could start allocating money towards Bitcoin. Now, these sovereign wealth funds are the largest asset managers to a lot of local areas. So sovereign wealth funds, if you look at it by sector, it looks like it's a $10 trillion sector with $10 trillion worth of assets under management. We've seen that BlackRock and there's other potential likes who are potentially rumored to have been buying Bitcoin. Now, BlackRock seems to be in the loop with a lot of people, including the Saudis. So Saudi's sovereign wealth funds is a new star executive, and there's a BlackRock deal in line with here. So we've had rumors circulating for quite some time that the UAE, the potential of Saudi, or some big major player in the BRICS is buying Bitcoin or discussing it. Does this nearly confirm that the Saudis or some major player is now discussing purchasing Bitcoin or having some sort of allocation towards it? Now, I don't want to jump to full conclusions because this has all been rumors, But where there's smoke, there's fire, folks, especially in this industry. So BlackRock has had a lot of connections to various sovereign wealth funds. So the fact that he is pointing out the sovereign wealth funds of potentially having a 2 to 5% allocation, and then that would lead to a potential 5, 6, 700 price per Bitcoin seems to be a huge jump. Now, where are we right now in the cycle? We're sitting at like 100,000. So he's predicting at least a 5x return this year if 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 sovereign wealth funds start to develop a Bitcoin strategy, right? But we have a lot of clues writing on the wall as to this, what BlackRock and what BlackRock's association is with a lot of these sovereign wealth funds. So one of those being the Saudi Arabian sovereign wealth funds. Now, if we look at a lot of these other sovereign wealth funds, like how many total assets under management, there's been, 1.8 trillion in the Norway, but there's also the Chinese with 1.3, Safe Investment Company in Asia with over a trillion, Abu Dhabi, where we just had the Bitcoin conference here not too long ago at number 4 with $1 trillion. So it seems like these sovereign wealth funds could potentially be buying up Bitcoin here pretty quickly. And if they just allocate a 2 to 5% allocation, that will increase dramatically. Now, there's sovereign wealth funds all over the globe that have already been partnering up with BlackRock. We've even got Greece. Greece is in a tough economic state, but in this past summer, Greece set up its first sovereign wealth fund with the initial capital of 300 million euros. And it partnered with BlackRock. So it had BlackRock's now on board. So a lot of these sovereign wealth funds around the globe trust BlackRock. Now, am I saying, and I was sitting here saying, hey, if you're a sovereign wealth fund, you should trust BlackRock on everything you're doing? No, I'm not saying that. That's furthest from the truth. All I'm saying is that BlackRock is now confirming the fact that a lot of sovereign wealth funds are starting to take a look at Bitcoin and really take a look seriously, looking at allocating 2 to 5%. And it's a serious conversation. And they're saying, hey, if every single sovereign wealth fund starts to develop this thesis, well, that's going to start a snowball effect, folks. And that snowball effect is going to lead to a massive run up, creating tons of FOMO all over the globe. Now, we're looking at all these different sovereign wealth funds here that could potentially have some access to Bitcoin. A lot of these are located in Asia and the Middle East. The major ones are actually just located in Asia and the Middle East. If we scroll, we got to scroll down a ways before we even get to Australia at number 19, and then 20 is Europe. So literally the top 18 sovereign wealth funds are in Asia or the Middle East. So outside of the Norway one, outside the Norway one at the top. So 17 of the top 18 are in Europe, or are in the Middle East or in Southeast Asia. So what does that mean? That means the potential of China getting access to Bitcoin. That means the potential for the UAE. That means the potential for Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, the likes of many others to now get involved with Bitcoin. Now, it seems like that these sovereign wealth funds could buy Bitcoin, and it's been a representation of the potential of the future. But this isn't the first time that this rumor has been floated around. Look at the date of this article, folks. March 2016, or March 26th, 2021, where we had Singapore, home of 2 sovereign wealth funds, GIC and Temasek, which are 2 of the world's largest non-carbon derived funds. These 2 funds have different strategies, yet GIC is seen as more conservative of the 2, investing in safe bets such as infrastructure, while Temasek is the higher risk leaning and might not be thought of taking the similar approach. But Temasek looks to be buying Bitcoin, and this is back in 2021, folks. So we had sovereign wealth funds buying Bitcoin back then, 3-4 years ago. And now we have Larry Fink openly coming out saying, hey, more are talking about this. And everybody should be keeping a very close eye on these sovereign wealth funds and all of the buying that could be potentially going on here. So in 21, it said it remains to be seen what the long-term plan for the digital assets on sovereign wealth funds balance sheet could be, but it could set the stage for CBDCs. See, they were already planting the stage of the potential of these CBDCs. But just look how big this visual is here, folks, when you look at the differences between these sovereign wealth funds and these companies, right? So we have equities in these sovereign wealth funds. We've got literally 973 billion and 374 at fixed incomes. They have US treasuries, Japanese treasuries. They've got the likes of Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, Nvidia. Now, who remembers what BlackRock was saying and JP Morgan was saying not too long ago? What banks were releasing reports on not too long ago? They were strictly saying, hey, we are looking at Bitcoin similar to the Magnificent Seven. Now look at how much allocation they have to these Magnificent Seven here. They got Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, Nvidia. Granted, it's a small portion of their portfolio, but if my quick math is right here, it looks like this is 64 plus 80 plus 94 plus 106 billion here, strictly in those 5 companies. Now, that 106 could be split up a little bit differently and could potentially have some sort of allocation to Bitcoin. Now, I definitely see a potential where these sovereign wealth funds can continue. But I think the interesting aspect is who these sovereign wealth funds could potentially be buying Bitcoin. Now, the major one that I think we've all heard the rumors about at this point is the UAE. We have a $240 billion sovereign wealth fund that has been rumored to invest in crypto, right? To a later extent. First of all, I think it's real. I think the business that had $200 billion worth of crypto value 2 years ago. It's now seen at $2.5 trillion today and growing. So I think many people are skeptics, and I do not fall in that category. I think I now see it as real. So a lot of these sovereign wealth funds have now come out and said, hey, we missed the boat maybe early on. I was skeptical at the beginning, but now I'm seeing the true value of Bitcoin, and I need to have some sort of allocation towards Bitcoin here going forward. And many of these are now having, the potential. And there's been a lot of rumors floating around. There was rumors here earlier or a couple years ago that a sovereign wealth fund had been buying $500 billion worth of Bitcoin. Look, analyst Luke Broyles, friend of the program, peels off the truth of a potential sell front. So he thinks that, there's buzz surrounding around the movers, but tempers expectations, speculating the narrative of this information. He draws attention to the sheer magnitude of these sovereign wealth funds' proportion allocations. If compared to the investment, it would surpass even the disclosed position of the industry titan Michael Saylor by astonishing 671 times. Let's repeat that, folks. We could have 671 Michael Saylors jump on board here strictly by what Larry Fink is saying because of the sheer amount of volume and the sheer amount of dollars that we have here. So I think that is absolutely huge. We could have 671 Michael Saylors come on just by what Larry Fink is saying. And so I think this is a point where we're really seeing sovereign wealth funds truly start to grab a lot of attention in the Bitcoin space. I think that they're going to be absolutely huge. And I think that they're going to start to take charge in Bitcoin pretty soon here. But we have Cloud9 Bill saying the SBR will be a huge catalyst. Other countries will follow. Sure. I 100% agree that the SBR will be absolutely massive, but I think everybody is neglecting these sovereign wealth funds. What the magnitude they have as to, potentially being 671 Michael Saylors to come in, right? I mean, I think that ETFs added a lot of validity when things came about, right? I think a lot of people were essentially worried about custodying their Bitcoin and other aspects. But the ETFs added some sort of some sort of validity to this, right? Added some sort of validity to allow countries to now come in. But the thing that I think people are truly missing is the true power of Bitcoin, being able to actually hold your own cash. And you could do that with Bitcoin Well. That's why I partnered with them. You could go to bitcoinwell.com/green candle, and you could join me today where you could have the potential to win 1 million sats, excuse me. But the big thing is like a lot of these big players, you might be making huge purchases of Bitcoin. If you are, that is 50K and up, I highly encourage you go into their OTC desk and go to Bitcoin Well Infinite. You can go in there and you can even email me at greencandleit@gmail.com, and I'll help connect you guys and help you personally connect with the Bitcoin Well Infinite, and they will set you up with the best white glove service. All you got to do is just email them or email me at otc@bitcoinwell.com, or email me at greencandleit@gmail.com, and I will help you guys set up the perfect way to buy an over-the-counter Bitcoin and have the best experience possible, where you're purchasing large purchases, but also in the most secure ways possible. You could have it sent directly to cold storage, so I highly, highly recommend that. You don't have to worry about any counterparty risk like Larry Fink and BlackRock. Larry Fink and BlackRock are purchasing massive amounts of Bitcoin here. They're purchasing 600 million worth of Bitcoin, which would be the largest purchase of the year. So, with that, like, why would you trust Larry Fink to custody your Bitcoin, right? If you're holding it at a personal level, even if you're holding it at an institutional level, it adds a ton of counterparty risk. And then he can go on there, he can go on shows like he did today and leak how much you're potentially going to buy here. So I think it's really interesting that Larry Fink at Davos, of all places, is sitting here disclosing what the sovereign wealth funds are discussing, how many people are potentially looking to buy Bitcoin, and the percentage allocation that they have to Bitcoin, even up to 5%. Now, there's been reports from multiple big money managers as to how much you should allocate, with all of them at least saying, hey, at least get started, at least get 1% allocation. And it looks like Larry Fink is coming to the table with a lot of other sovereign wealth funds and starting to listen in, starting to hear them. So if you guys are new here, smash the subscribe button, hit that like button as well. As my buddy, who is actually not in the chat today, surprisingly enough, always says, smoke that like button like Cheech and Chong. But I also have a big surprise for you guys. Well, not so much a surprise, but I've got this great interview with Jeff Booth. So if you go to my channel, you go to videos, you can go see the latest interview that I had with Jeff Booth. I highly, highly encourage you guys to go see that, because Jeff is the absolute man. So if you want to learn anything about Bitcoin, he's your guy. So go ahead and go check that out. But before you do that, smash that like button, and I will see you guys all at the next one.